Cash 22 mein subah on a Sunday, where we are just getting into a Cash 22. So this is an interesting conversation. I think I'm probably the least qualified person with 3 doctors sitting in front of us who specialize in these technologies. But what we'll try to do is we'll have a little bit of introduction and a few questions, but I would love to have your thoughts, your questions, queries, any loud thoughts around the conversation as well, so that we can keep it as interactive as possible. And starting with my panelists, rather than me introducing them, I'm requesting them to introduce themselves so that they can do justice to their introductions as well. So starting with the lady, Dr. Maryam, please.
Assalamu alaikum. Everybody can hear me? Yes. Fantastic. So I'm Dr. Maryam Mustafa. I'm an assistant professor with the Department of Computer Science at LUMS. And my research predominantly looks at designing and understanding the adoption, access to, and use of technologies for underserved populations in contexts like Pakistan.
Thank you so much. Dr. Agha, please. Sorry, it was a very humble introduction, so please don't take that on its face, please.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. My name is Agha Ali Raza. I'm an assistant professor of computer science at LUMS and also the director for Center for Speech and Language Technologies, which is also housed in LUMS. So my area of interest is speech and natural language processing within machine learning. And my focus is on enabling technologies for people who are low literate, non-tech savvy, who cannot handle textual interfaces, and so on and so forth. Looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you so much. Doctor.
Assalamu alaikum. I am Professor Khurram from Computer Systems Engineering Department, NED University. And I'm also a founder of Research Center for Artificial Intelligence at NED. And also the regional director of National Center of AI made by Higher Education Commission. And my work is related to IoT and computer vision based applications. And lastly, I am a founder of, I started a company, crop2x.com, which is using AI for agriculture. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you for coming all the way from Karachi. Thank you. Ali.
Assalamu alaikum, Ji. I'm Ali Ahmed Khan. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Beacon House. And since Badar has unfairly claimed the least qualified position under protest, I'll take the second least qualified position. I'm a group of people at Beacon House who are leading the digital transformation of the organization and also the Education Technology Initiative.
Thank you so much, Ali. And I think that's critically important. Absolutely. हमारे बॉस हैं, so अली के लिए तालियां ज़रूरी हैं. But I think moving forward, I think before we even deep dive into who will win and what's going on, would be great अगर हम आप 3 doctors से ये समझ सकें what is exactly statistics, machine learning and AI. Like how do you differentiate for a layman उनके perspective से how if you can give examples or share few thoughts. And few of your thoughts around that would be great. So I'll let Dr. Agha take lead on this and then Maryam.
Sure, thank you, Badar. Let's start with a very, very brief introduction of 2 terms and I'll come back to statistics after that. So AI and ML, which are primarily used interchangeably nowadays. When we mean one is more famous, the other is less famous. We know AI, more people know about artificial intelligence, less about ML. But there is a little bit of history to it. Back in 1950s and 60s, when we came up with the idea of coming up with machines that can learn from their own mistakes, programs that can learn from their own mistakes and improve over time, it was called AI, it was called artificial intelligence. Up until around 1969, when the media had already created a lot of hype around this artificial intelligence, you already were seeing like robots and things that could do poetry, so there was a lot of promises. But around that time, there was a major research paper by Minsky and Papert, which showed that there's a very simple problem which machine learning or artificial intelligence, as it was called at that time, could not solve. So it was a very, very simple problem that we humans can very easily solve. So it could not solve it. And that began what we called the AI winter. Like all interest, all funding went away from AI. Like no one wanted to fund this field anymore. So 10 years after that, researchers figured out that, okay, if we write our grant proposals with AI on it, no one's going to fund it. So let's coin a new phrase for it. So the new phrase, the new name for it was machine learning. So that was the origin of the name. But by then, another fundamental change had occurred. The original field of AI was focused on creating machines that can emulate humans. So machines which can be like humans, think like humans. And we used to think at that point that humans are logical. It could not be far away from the fact, but yeah, we used to think that humans are primarily logical. After that, when the machine learning era started, we dropped that idea and we said, okay, let's make better machines. Stop emulating humans, just machines that can learn from their mistakes. And for that, the framework that was utilized was statistics. So the statistics is the learning framework which is used by machine learning. So this is how the field progressed from one to the other.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Dr. Maryam.
I think Dr. Agha has done a fantastic job of giving us a crash course on the
Every
history of
second
AI.
follow-up question
right?
is always a difficult one to...
No, I would just say I think that it's enough to know that AI is sort of this broader term, and AI systems are basically just cognitively trying to perform certain tasks. And how they learn to perform those tasks is just then machine learning, right? Machine learning is helping a machine learn from data that already exists, right? And it's from new data, learning from experiences, that's what I would say machine learning is.
Ji, thank you so much. Dr. Khurram, आप कुछ add करना चाहेंगे?
Yeah, I just want to add, of course, AI and machine learning is properly defined by the two doctors. I just want
Sorry,
to
Dr.
just...
Khurram, इसको करीब कर लीजिएगा.
Ji. Am I audible now? So basically, intelligence is the ability to learn through experience. If it is in a machine, we call it AI. And if the machine is able to learn by itself and program its software, and you can see modify its software itself, then we call it machine learning. So that's how simply you can think of what is ML. So it has its statistics part, a mathematics part, and we call it neural networks. It also comes under machine learning. So there are few bigger some keywords that you can go through if you want to learn about machine learning. Thank you.
जी, Ali, मैं आपकी तरफ आता हूँ because I want ज़रा higher view from yourself. But Dr. Maryam और Dr. Khurram, आपने बहुत आसान अल्फाज में, बड़े सादे अल्फाज में, you have put it in a very positive perspective. So would love to learn कि what are the examples of a good or bad AI or good or bad tech, and especially अगर कोई examples के साथ explain कर सकें.
So that's a great question, but also a very loaded one, right? So putting things in binary, good and bad, is never a good idea.
But you can put it in a spectrum as well.
Certainly a spectrum, right? I think that, so what I do have, and I have a very bad memory, so I've written this down. I'm not reading my texts. So what I do have some real world examples actually, because often what happens is wherever you apply tech, very, very often it's bought in as this one-stop solution to solve an inherent inequity within your society, right? Whether it's educational tech, whether it's communication tech, whether it's financial services, right? And the idea seems to be that here's a quick fix to what's been ailing society for decades, right? It turns out it doesn't fix anything. What it does is कि जो आपकी underlying inequities हैं, वो और amplify हो जाती हैं. Technology always makes things more more polarizes things, right? जो आपकी underlying, so for example, during COVID, what happened was you have government schools, you have schools that have less funding, less resources, less perhaps qualified faculty, and then you have private schools in Pakistan, right? And we've always known there is some inequity in how these two schools function and the kind of education they are providing. COVID hit, and now the nice, expensive private schools had access to tech, the kids had access to tech, the parents had access to tech, and the parents were learned enough to get their kids on Zoom and Google Meet and whatever. So things went about, it was business as usual, more or less. That's not what happened with government schools. So here, it's such a clear example of how technology, the access to tech, the sort of use of tech actually amplified something we all knew was there. And very, very often, that's what tech does. It doesn't solve anything. You need to put in resources to actually solve the underlying societal inequities before tech can actually help, right? So I have examples of where artificial intelligence was actually deployed and how certain inequities were then coded, right? So that's often what happens with AI, because even for faculty, even for folks who work in AI, often the algorithms या जो आपकी mathematical frameworks use हो रहे हैं, they're a black box, right? They're taking some data, वो उससे कुछ सीख रहे हैं और फिर कुछ predict कर रहे हैं. अब वो क्या सीख रहे हैं, often you can't predict, you don't know, because it's a lot of data and often there's a lot of noise in the data, right? So for example, the Correctional Offender Management Profiling for Alternative Sanctions, it's called the COMPASS system. This was a system used in the US court systems to predict the likelihood that a defendant would re-offend, right? So if you have somebody who's come in and who's committed a crime, you want to be able to predict is how likely is this person to commit another crime, right? How likely is he going to re-offend? It turns out, and the COMPASS was based on lots and lots of data about people who had committed crimes and how many of them had re-offended, right? And that data included things like your gender, your age, your race, your job, your education, all of these things. It turns out COMPASS predicted twice as many false positives for recidivism for black offenders than white offenders. And the difference was 45% for black offenders and 23% for white offenders, right? Similarly, in 2015, Amazon found that their AI-based hiring algorithms, so more and more companies are now turning towards algorithms to help them sort through all the applications that they get for any given jobs. So what Amazon found was that their AI-based hiring algorithm was biased against women simply because the training data had been based on male resumes, right? So आप data क्या दे रहे हो इस machine को? What is it? What is the data set that it is learning from? And उसमें क्या inherent biases हैं? The last example, and I think this is particularly pertinent to Pakistan, and this has come up again and again in my own work in healthcare in Pakistan. AI, it's been gaining traction in healthcare circles, especially when it comes to analyzing medical images, right? आपका एक X-ray है, उसको देखकर, an AI algorithm can like tell के, there's certain masses somewhere. Does this look like this person might have cancer? Maybe there's another diagnosis based on the imaging. So when it comes to analyzing medical images like X-rays or MRI scans, these systems tend to take on implicit biases of the trainers, leading to those biases continuing and solidifying. And so a 2020 study found that gender imbalances in the training data sets of computer-aided diagnostic systems led to the system displaying lower accuracy for women's X-rays than men's, just because the training data diya tha, wo bias tha. And the kind of biases that I'm talking about are class-based bias, right? So if you think about healthcare in Pakistan, which hospital could possibly be digitizing data? Maybe national, right? And rich people go to national. So when you go to Lady Wellington or you go to these government hospitals, they don't have digitized data. They don't have computer systems. And so if you were to build a model, you would take data you have access to. So it's most likely going to be rich people data. Right? So class is one, gender is another, ethnicity is one, race is another. And I think in a Pakistani context, religion is another bias. And so any tech that you create kind of needs to accommodate or needs to be really, really cognizant of the biases it might be coding into its algorithms.
Absolutely, thank you so much. So basically, at the end of the day, आपका machine learning का जो algorithm है, अगर वो from a programmatic perspective, even if it's perfect or near perfect, अगर उसका sample data which is statistics based, अगर वो सही sampling नहीं हुई है, so that means we are not getting the right learning and hence not the right intelligence, जैसे आपने कहा, whether it is human or digital intelligence. So eventually it boils down to the fact that sample sizing और उसकी जो size of the sample है वो इतना हो के statistically significant आप उसके results ला सकें. So absolutely, thank you so much. I think this was a little difficult one and a more deeper tech वाली side पे जा रहे थे. डॉक्टर आगा अगर आप कुछ इस पे ऐड करना चाहें please.
Gee, thank you, Badar. So let me give you a very, I think, a plain example. So machine learning systems learn from data. We generate data. So if I want to create an algorithm that looks at the profile of a suspect and decides whether that person is a criminal or not, or looks at a CV and decides whether to offer a job or not, the data that I'm going to provide that algorithm to train on was generated by us, by humans. Now, if you ask me a question, I'm a father of 2 little girls, so if you ask me the question that I want my kids to grow up to be nice people, ethical, who are not racist, who don't have any biases, then my answer would be very careful. They're imitating you. Whatever you do, they're going to imitate that. Let's say the same thing about your machine learning models. They're imitating you. If in our system, if in our judiciary, we have been carrying around some systematic biases, I give the same data to the machine has been trained to pick up those biases. It's guaranteed it's going to do the same biases. If you have some biases in the way you offer jobs and scan CVs, if, for example, you feel that women are less capable of a particular job than men, if you have been practicing that for years, and I give that data to a machine, the machine is going to pick that up. It's not the fault of the machine. We are the ones who are at fault at this point. So just like Maryam said, the technology is just an amplifier of whatever exists. You give it a good thing, it's going to amplify that, scale that. You give it a bad thing, you give it a bias, it's going to amplify that. It's as simple as that. Now, we can do certain things afterwards to control some of those biases, to understand some of those biases, hence the domains of fair machine learning and explainable AI and things like that. But there's a limit to what we can do there. The data that we're providing it is the key, which makes it good or bad.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I think that was a great example, really helpful. Dr. Khurram, आप कुछ इस पे different perspective अगर लाना चाहें?
Yes, basically, as Dr. Agha said, AI algorithm or AI systems are as good as you provide the data. If you are providing the data that is not properly representative, that has biases, that will definitely affect the predictions made by the machine learning model after it's trained. Machine learning became very popular because of the black box approach, that we just provide the data, it trains itself. You don't need to really bother about how it is going through the training process, and then it gives certain predictions. But that brought in the biasness and the problems associated with the data that are feeding in. And in terms of Pakistan, the bigger problem is actually the data itself. That we do not have that digitization. We do not have all the most of the population, covered through the data samples that we have. And data collection is the major problem in Pakistan. So when it comes to the implementation of AI in different sectors, in government sectors, in industries, in banking, the main problem is, of course, there are techniques, but gathering of their data and gathering of quality data is the main thing that is that needs to be looked into through policies, through frameworks that make it possible to collect the the quality data, the representative data of the whole population, representing all the religions, races, ethnicities, gender. So that's one thing that we need to see in the future. Plus, because of the shortcomings of this machine learning, black box approach, the new concept that is arising in the first world and in the developed world is the human in the loop concept. That we need to review the answers of an AI system through a board of people who are trained well to actually review the answers given by an intelligent system, so that we can check on the bias, if there are any biasness or if there are any answers given by the machine that needs to review. And that's how the machine can become more intelligent after receiving that review from the human being. So I'm quite positive about that if we make a framework of collaboration between the machine and people and keep this human in the loop concept in perspective, then AI can really be helpful for people to perform tasks more intelligently and in a quicker way.
डॉक्टर साहब, आपने बहुत सिंप्लीफाई कर दिया. हम अभी इकोनॉमिक चार्टर नहीं एग्री कर पाए हैं पाकिस्तान में. आप AI के चार्टर की बात कर रहे हैं. So I think there's a...
Yeah, of course, we need to see what could be the future and what needs to be done.
Correct. But thank you for bringing the conversation towards policy. So Ali, आप थोड़ी देर से खामोश हैं, I know, but मेरा आपसे एक specific perspective is less specific to deep diving into AI, but a more 30,000 feet view. कि क्या, how are we seeing this in Pakistan from a very policy standpoint of view? कैसे हो रहा है? How is the policy regulatory frameworks जो हैं हमारे, how aligned are they? How supportive are they of the new tech? कैसे आप एड टेक के स्पेसिफिकली पर्सपेक्टिव से, अभी तो AI तो हम शायद कुछ और जनरेशन्स की बात कर रहे होंगे, बट इवन फ्रॉम बेसिक एड टेक पर्सपेक्टिव थोड़ा सा हमें रीजनल, ग्लोबल और पाकिस्तान कॉन्टेक्स्ट अगर आप समझा सकें.
So I think jahan tak regulation is concerned, not much is happening at all. I remember in 1998, Malaysia made a law. In 1998, Malaysia made a law in which they accepted digital signatures valid for contracts. I'm not sure if that law exists in Pakistan even today.
It exists, but अभी enforce नहीं हो पा रहा.
Like so many other laws. So unfortunately, from a regulatory point of view, we take an approach of blocking things instead of trying to understand them, tread carefully, and maybe just learn from I mean, the best approach is to just go all in, like most of the world does. But what we do is we block. And one of the examples which we discussed was that YouTube, when you were with Google, was blocked for 3 years in Pakistan. And in all that time, Pakistani content creators missed out the opportunity to get their message on the spread out or broadcast to the internet world, as well as monetizing opportunities. And more importantly, the image of Pakistan was, the story of Pakistan was told by people who are not Pakistanis in most cases. Now today we are finally accepted that it does nothing, so we opened it up, and now we have highest hours or time spent. It's the most popular
Actually,
website.
उसको हमें TikTok मिल गया ना बंद करने के लिए.
Yes, of course. Yeah. So we keep switching to the next one. And the same challenge lies with blockchain and cryptocurrencies and these things, which are going to come. And nobody really knows in what form they'll finally end up in our lives, but they are coming. Because we're not really ready for those. Now, because of this blocking or cutting out of this conversation, we also end up kind of eliminating them from our education. So when you can't talk about it, then you can't teach about it. So the education space, although we are in education, the schooling level, even then there are opportunities which children can take where they can talk about some of these technologies. We can teach them in the school, and though they get missed out as well. So I feel that as a country, we need to be a little bit more open. And if I was to just talk about the sector of education technology, and I know that most of the stuff is very expensive, and Pakistan can't really afford it. But if you were to step into a US classroom, they have gone all out on education technology. And more conservative countries, we tend to follow the British system. It's not there so much. But then you can see the advantages as well. That's why there's a Silicon Valley, which is in America, and no other country has been able to successfully replicate that, even with multiple magnitudes of population. So the opportunities have to be provided. The doors need to be open for people to walk in and out from places. And that's something which our regulators or policy makers need to introduce or understand.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Ali. And thank you so much, everyone joining us. Please, अपने questions, queries, thoughts, would appreciate अगर आप ushers के साथ share कर सकें, so that Ms. Nausheen जो खामोशी से बैठी हुई हैं वो मेरे लिए curate करती रहेंगी on the screen, so that we can have a more rich conversation with all the panelists. Coming back, Dr. Agha, थोड़ा सा how can you put AI into a Pakistani perspective? कोई अगर specific examples, and I think let's move to the question कि who will win? Do you think the machines जो हैं वो, do you think they will eventually supersede the human race? Or although भी Dr. Khurram कह रहे थे कि framework होना चाहिए, but I think that's a very simplistic expectation कि कोई हम exploitation नहीं करेंगे, because जैसे हमने बात की, जो biases अगर exist करती हैं, इसी तरह जो geopolitical biases exist करती हैं तो वो भी regional impacts लाएंगी, इसी तरह जो global biases exist करती हैं वो भी biases लाएंगी, फिर regional biases हैं. तो थोड़ा सा अगर local context के साथ आप बता सकें कि what do you think, who is who do you see winning in this race would be great.
Thank
and
you.
Dr. Maryam would follow on this.
Thank you, Badar. Great question. I would like to answer that question from two perspectives. The first perspective is that whenever we think of an AI invasion, the images that pop up in our head are mostly like Terminators walking into a room and like shooting everyone. Probably a more realistic image is where the job market is now being dominated by these automated systems because they are cheaper, easier to scale, easier to manage. So all sorts of jobs which do not have a significant intellectual component attached to them, and eventually jobs which even have that component, they will to some extent be reshaping the job market. They will be overtaken by technology.
Automatable parts of the job हैं वो digitize हो जाएंगे.
वो digitize हो जाएंगे. So पहला एंगल तो ये है. अब इस एंगल में we can either weep about it, cry about it, or we can reshape our skill sets of our population so that they are better able to assemble into this new transition, into this new era of jobs. अब यहाँ पर एक जो major problem है
ना,
upskilling. अब यहाँ जो एक major problem है, that is that हम ये समझते हैं कि जो अमेरिका में AI के कपड़े बन रहे हैं ना, वो हमें fit आ जाएंगे. ऐसा नहीं है. Pakistan, unfortunately, right now is not even a major contender amongst the next billion initiative of Google. We are not a major market for them. So Pakistan has 71 languages. Out of those, 23 languages are endangered. Right now, the AI that exists even for Urdu is not something to be proud of. Who's going to work for that? Google? No, we're not a major interest for them. Facebook? No, maybe not. So if you look at the work in natural language processing and linguistics,
for interrupting, but जो अभी आपने bias वाली बात करते policy और वो देखिए उर्दू की अगर हम Google से expectation रखेंगे तो of course उसमें जो bias हिंदी की आएगी वो naturally आएगी because of course वहाँ Indian employees भी ज़्यादा हैं होंगे और of course उनका focus next billion initiative में वो भी इंडिया बड़ा होगा तो हमें we will still be the long tail of it.
Exactly. So we would need to develop these, localize करने की ज़रूरत है और वो हमें खुद करना पड़ेगा, हमें इस चीज़ के ऊपर आना पड़ेगा and we need to tailor these services to us. आना है इन services ने, हम रोक नहीं सकेंगे वो जैसे वो कहा ना अली साहब ने कि blocking की approach नहीं चलेगी. We would need to embrace it and we would need to prepare ourselves.
So the PEMRAs and the PTAs have to upskill themselves.
Upskill themselves, exactly.
मुझे पता था आप लोग नहीं कहना चाह रहे तो I just thought I'll take it on that.
Thank you.
Because from a policy perspective and just to add to what Ali just shared, I work a lot on the tech policy side. Unfortunately, and with all due respect, the challenge is the policymakers are digital immigrants. They are not digital natives, one. And two, very few really want transparency. So इन दोनों की वजह से हम tech ही नहीं ला पा रहे अभी तो AI तो I think बहुत दूर की बात है. और I think education में we are lagging far behind. कुछ चीज़ें जहाँ उनको value मिल रही थी, for example, of course, हुकूमत को tax चाहिए, तो उनको e-commerce नज़र आया, उन्होंने कहा dollars आ रहे हैं, तो let's start taxing it, तो उन्होंने policy बना ली. But I think when it comes to education, it's probably not on the radar for now. And I think वहाँ भी हमारी politics और वो play कर रही है, and that's a very alarming situation कि tech में हम कैसे ला सकते हैं. So Dr. Maryam, थोड़ा सा आपके angle से आप कैसे देख रही हैं कि who's going to win actually from a very local perspective? So अभी तो आप ये कह रहे हैं अभी पाकिस्तान में तो humans ही win कर रहे हैं, machine तो भी आई नहीं है, data set ही है तो machine तो दूर की बात है, ठीक है.
So I like to take the optimistic view on this, and I think I moved back to Pakistan after I think over a decade, and I think the thing in the last 4 years that shocks me and surprises me and just brings me so much joy about Pakistan is just, if I may use the term, I know it's not polite, but जिस तरह के जुगाड़ मुझे यहाँ पे नज़र आते हैं, right? It's fabulous, right? From the lowest literate to the most educated, all the way across, you see these जुगाड़.
AI भी shortcut वाली होगी.
Shortcut वाली होगी, right? So I don't see us adopting traditional AI, right? And I am curious to see कि अब हम उसमें क्या जुगाड़ लगाते हैं, right? So and I am fully prepared that I don't think that. So I think we have some challenges. So Dr. Khurram raised this really interesting point कि आपका पाकिस्तान में data available नहीं है. And just, anecdotally, we were trying to create a healthcare system for pregnant women. जो मसला rural areas में ये होता है बहुत बड़ा pregnant ख़वातीन के लिए कि you just don't know कि अगर if you have a symptom, if you're feeling something, you don't know if it's serious or not, right? Often I'm feeling, a headache or dizzy, and you're told, "Jao jakar pocha lagao, you'll feel better," right? Which means go mop, you'll feel better, or go have a glass of milk and you'll feel better, or like women have been having babies for centuries. What is this new issue that you have? Turns out it's preeclampsia or it's gestational diabetes and something massive, but she just does now no longer have the time to go to the hospital. And so we said, well, maybe we can make a diagnostic system that gives them a red flag, right? So they can just type in headache or dizziness and sort of fatigue, and it will say with a certain predictability, oh, there's a very good chance ye serious hai, please go to a clinic, right? So a warning system. Uske liye aapko data chahiye, right? Or data you can't use white people data, you need local data. So we went to, if you guys are from Lahore, Lahore mein big Punjab, the two big hospitals that service Punjab are Lady Wellington and Lady Aitchison, right? And we said, can we have your data? And at the time, I was with a government institute, and they said, sure, we'd love to give you our data. We have lots of data. And they took us to this little room that was just full of registers, right? Just lots and lots of registers. And this is gold.
I think we expect kar rahe the, OCR bhi aap karenge, aur phir aap usko.
Right? And this is gold, this data. But it would take my lifetime and then some to digitize this, right? If we could digitize it, it would be fabulous. So I think we're really far away from any point where, humans are outnumbered. But I'm keen to see what we do when we get to that stage, because I have full faith in our ability to find shortcuts and to, break things and manipulate them to fit them into our context. I think our people are great with that, because keep in mind, every single bit of tech you use is not something that was homegrown, right? So you've adopted it. I've seen women, because, I think all the women here will understand this. In Pakistan, women don't have access to physical spaces, right? You will not see a woman jisne parchoon ki dukaan kholi hui hai. You don't see, you don't go to Liberty and see lots of women run shops. And so what women have done is they've taken over the digital space, and now they have digital shops, right? And you will hardly find a man owning a digital business, because it's a space dominated by women. And women don't have access to spaces to have conversations around their own sexuality or their own intimate health or their own maternal health. But now you find women who've adopted Facebook groups and made them anonymous and closed and curated these groups to have these safe spaces to have these conversations. So I think our people are fantastic at breaking and molding tech to fit their context. And so I think with AI, we'll probably see that as well.
Absolutely. So just to put things into context, let me share a few numbers with you. So out of the 220 million people, almost 180, 190 million people now have access to mobile in Pakistan. Out of those, almost 110 million people are now connected to the internet, which means कि तकरीबन आपके 10 करोड़ से ज़्यादा लोग जो हैं वो इस वक्त इंटरनेट से कनेक्टेड हैं पाकिस्तान के अंदर. उनमें से 45 million people are now connected to a social network. 4.5-5 करोड़ लोग जो हैं वो किसी न किसी social network पे they are connected. So you have a huge connectivity which is now actually democratizing the policy making as well. People are bypassing actually policy. It's now getting P2P, peer to peer. इसीलिए फिर हुकूमत पाकिस्तान को याद आया क्रिप्टो भी बंद कर देनी चाहिए, तो उन्होंने क्रिप्टो भी बंद कर दी just to kind of minimize the peer to peer or a direct connection. So I think we are getting more direct in that sense, and I absolutely agree कि जो हमारे Facebook groups हैं और वो they're giving more personal and secure spaces to especially minorities in that sense, in that perspective. I know we have very few minutes left, and I really want to jump into the Q&A part. तो डॉक्टर खुर्रम, आपका कोई स्पेसिफिक पर्सपेक्टिव के पाकिस्तान के पर्सपेक्टिव से आपके ख्याल में कौन जीत रहा है? वैसे तो हमारे हमसाया मुल्क अफ़गानिस्तान में हमने बहुत हाईटेक एक आर्मी को हमारे हमसायों ने बिल्कुल लो टेक के साथ 10-15 साल लगा के फारिग कर दिया. But do you think we are we on the same page or a little better in that sense?
No, we are actually, जैसे आपने भी numbers share किए हैं. So on social media, they are like how much percentage? Like 5% of people are on social media, less than 5.
45 million out
2.5%.
of
2.5% people are in social media. So we cannot actually. That's a very small size as compared to the whole country.
Almost 20+%.
Yeah, so still 20% is not that big number, and most of these people are educated people, and people who are into the villages, who are into urban, non-urban areas, Like, I give you an example of agriculture, because agriculture is like kind of backbone of Pakistan. Pakistan, the whole nation relies on this sector. 70% of the workers in agriculture are women. So if we talk about,
And they don't have access to
of
connectivity.
course, they don't have mobile phones, they don't have literacy to actually use smartphones. So because when I have been working with farmers for like past 5 years, and I have seen that there is a big gap, like around 200 years gap between the developed world and us in agriculture sector. And meanwhile, Pakistan is an agriculture country. We cannot prosper without a strong agriculture backbone. So here you see what we see, that we can, if we really want even to implement AI or data science into agriculture, we do not have the ground data. We do not have weather stations. We do not have the network that are present to collect data in the advanced countries. There are already networks, dedicated networks that support Internet of Things. But we do not have that, and every now and then we face floods. We install sensors and then they get washed away because of floods every 3-4 years. So it's a big challenge when it comes to collection of data and understanding the importance of data among the masses. There is no appreciation that people would be thinking that, okay, if they contribute to the collection of data, their life would be better. So there is a big need here that we need to make people aware and educate about.
Abhi kaun jeet raha hai? AI ya humans?
It's all conventional actually.
So we are still far off from that perspective.
Yeah, of course.
And especially in our rural agriculture, jo hamara core
of course.
is waqt-
Because people are maybe if they are using WhatsApp, that's the most they can do using voice messages. That's it.
So at least now they are on an interactive medium. Pehle to one-way broadcast tha media, ab at least interactive pe aana shuru hue hain.
Yeah, they are using as a voice message, but they cannot use the other apps or other intelligent apps on mobile phone because they cannot type easily.
So just the one thing I would, to add here is that I think that, you're absolutely right. I think बहुत slowly ये भी change हो रहा है, so there are a couple of organizations like Circle that specifically look at digital trainings, right? Sadaf. And then there's another organization that went into interior Sindh, and they sat down with female farmers and they उनको ना crash course दिया on Facebook and social media. And one of the interesting things that happened was that these women were raising cows and livestock, and they were sending it to big cities to be sold. But because women have limited mobility, these cows and these livestock were being sent through a middleman. And not surprisingly, the bulk of the money was being made by the middleman, right? So the women were getting a very small amount. And once they'd had this training, it turns out they realized that they could put pictures of the livestock on Facebook and then just sell directly to people in the big cities who would be willing to pay for the shipping, right? So I think that change is happening. It's just very, very slow. But I see these isolated cases that give you sort of hope.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So Ali, just in the last couple of minutes before we open up for questions, I think we have a decent number of questions already with us. So उस पर भी हमें आपके साथ time चाहिए होगा. But again, from a very tech-centric perspective and tech and education का जो intersection है, आप कैसे देख रहे हैं एक तो larger education and AI or even basic tech, ed tech की तरफ हम are we really scaling up to that? और दूसरा specifically from a Beacon House perspective, अगर आप कोई initiatives share करना चाहें कि कैसे आप लोग कर रहे हैं उस पर, तो would love to learn that.
So pehle to, if I could just add to the who's going to win part. So I'm an optimist like Dr. Maryam. As Iqbal said कि ज़रा नम हो तो ये मट्टी बड़ी ज़रखेज़ है साकी. The problem is कि जहाँ मट्टी मिलती है हम एक housing society बना देते हैं. So कितनी मट्टी रह जाएगी I don't know. But
मुझे लग रहा है कि हम neutrals की तरफ जा रहे हैं,
but so while machines are learning to make better machines, there are some wonderful people in our classrooms who are making better humans, right? So these better humans are, I'm not just talking about skills in education, I'm talking about they're trying to make them kinder, they have more empathy, teaching them respect. And these people, when they program the next set of machines, then some of these biases may not be there. So I feel that in the end, humans will win out. Maybe not these humans we are here, but a different set of humans. And will replace, AI basically replaces tasks. And if your job is made up of tasks which could be replaced, then your job is replaced. So from an edtech point of view, there's a lot of focus going on in classrooms, in Beacon House classrooms, and other classrooms as well, I'm sure, across the world. There has been a lot of work done on it. But in Pakistan, Beacon House is pioneering some of the work. And we are introducing programming much earlier. We are going to be introducing devices into our classrooms. So this time next year, many of our classrooms could look like the first world classrooms. But we're not just focused on the look part of it as well. We are trying to learn wherever this has been implemented in countries which have a head start of 6 years, 8 years, 10 years. We're trying to learn from them, and we're trying to learn to see how we can not make the same mistakes and how we can kind of tailorize it to our needs and our cultural context.
That.
Yes, so localize it in a perfect way, or as perfect as possible, that we don't have the same problems, but we also kind of anticipate some of the things which could happen in Pakistan. So there's issues related to cost, and then there are issues related to content. A lot of the content is just international, it's not suited for this. So there is we are working to develop some of that as well. So we are hopefully, as I said, there will be a lot more education technology in Beacon House classrooms, and it will be aided. And what it does is, a lot of technology coming into education is, it allows us to assess a child in multiple ways. What right now is just the exam. And by doing that, we focus on more holistic development, which we feel is what the job of education should be. And we continue to work better in that direction, where the students which will come out from here will be able to learn, unlearn on their own, because that's one skill they're going to need. Because the world of technology is going to change so quickly that somebody like me and you probably have to do it maybe twice in our lifetimes. They will probably have to do it every 3-4 times, so they should be able to learn independently, unlearn independently, and then get going. So yeah, that's what we are working on.
Thank you so much, Ali. I'll just share 2 quick examples and thoughts, and I think then we'll move to the Q&A part. Yesterday, I was actually judging Taiwan's student awards, National IT Tech Student Awards of Taiwan. And they were more regional, so economies from Singapore, Hong Kong, everyone was participating. So the winner actually was a Singaporean startup, a student startup, where they are using a cow's nose, which has a very unique pattern like our fingerprint, to identify and tag cows rather than doing RFID in their ears. So that you can identify cows and gather them together in Africa and other emerging markets or agri-based economies like Pakistan for insurance purposes. So it was fintech for agri in that sense. That's a student startup. That's more important from Singapore. So the level, and I think I think where our students need to really catch up and our education system really needs to support that, is towards that direction. And one last thing which I'd like to add is, the first time I went to Google, I was introduced in a lunch queue to an engineer as one of the top engineers at Google. And I was also told that, he just recently joined Google and he's one of the best engineers at Google. So I asked him that, you recently joined Google, what were you doing before that? And he said, I was a chef. And I was like, okay. I thought maybe I'm too hungry or what. I didn't probably hear it clearly. And then I said, what have you studied? He said, I have masters in psychology. And then he said, I went to school not to learn the subject, but to learn how to learn a new thing every time. So the ability to unlearn and relearn is probably the most important ability we can actually inculcate in our students. So I think that's also critically important, whether it is AI, machine learning, I think that's critically important. So let's jump into the Q&A. So Ms. Nosheen has actually curated quite a lot for us. So I'll just read the questions and I'll let any one of you pick it up depending on whatever you want to add to it. So is artificial intelligence a good career for Pakistani women? Do you think, of course, I think I'll let you take lead on that. Do you think the artificial intelligence industry is still recovering from the gender biasness? And this question is actually directed towards you.
So it's a hard one. I don't think any career is a good one or a bad one, right? So just to, I was pre-med, and then I did CS at LUMS, but then I did an equal number of psychology, right?
So, graduate in medicine?
No, I was like in my
Undergrad.
A-levels,
Okay,
so I didn't take any maths for many years, right? And then I ended up in CS at LUMS, but then my interest was always psychology, so I took a lot of the psychology courses. And then I did a master's in engineering, and then I ended up with the graphics department, but I was doing human-computer interaction, and I was the only one doing that in a graphics. So I think there's a, and this is, I mean, if there was one thing I wish my students would take away, it would be this. There is no straight path in your career. There is no A to B, right? You could be one thing and then reinvent yourself to be a different thing. And then as the winds and your desire and your passion changes, you should be able to reinvent yourself to be a different thing. I think one of the challenges in Pakistan is that students are fed this lie that you have to have a label and you have to be in a box. So you're either a computer scientist or you're a psychologist or you're an anthropologist, right? My work draws on computer science, psychology, sociology, anthropology, and very often I work with economists, right? So now I'm learning how to do RCTs and really heavy econ stuff. That's not, and I love doing it because, as Badar said, my training has been to learn how to learn, right? So it's not been in computer science, it has been to learn different things. And so certainly if you're a woman and the sciences are something that interests you, computer science is something that interests you, absolutely. But be open to changing direction, and I think your focus should be, how do I train myself to be open to relearn new things, right? Because I think if you want to do AI, then AI is not the only thing you're doing a bunch of other things.
Correct. And just to add to your argument, a few numbers. So Pakistan's IT services exports has crossed $2.6 billion last year. And in that sense, from an agri perspective, Pakistan's IT exports is now the second largest exports after textile. So we have crossed rice. So rice is now a third export category versus IT services. So and within that, $2.6 billion, almost $700 million are earned by freelancers every year in Pakistan, which is documented. And women, and young women especially, are a big portion of that freelancing part. So Ali, one question for you. What suggestion would you like to give to the student body regarding AI's future in education?
So I think that Dr. Maryam actually said it really well as well, that you can't just choose a career and start working towards it. But I think the reason that why we get that tunnel vision is that we look at a goal and that's how we proceed, is because how Pakistan.
Sorry, आपको interrupt करना. I think वो tunnel vision इसलिए कि हम पहले होता था हमने मैंने डॉक्टर बनना है या इंजीनियर बनना है, तो we used to work backwards. तो वो very linear था. I think now it's not linear. So how would you suggest?
Well, kind of it is, because in Pakistan you need a degree to get into a job, and you need to have a degree in something. And then degree people also have some restrictions on what age you can get into a college. They will never give a psychology chef admission into somewhere, a computer science classroom. So those challenges exist, and I'm not sure if our government is ever going to change those things. However, the private sector can. We can be more accepting of this, and yes, there are people, sometimes, we don't always in the education role, but we do hire people who do not have degrees. I know of software houses who have just started bringing on people if they have the skill, regardless of what their final qualification is. So yeah, the students, if those doors can open, then lots of people would be ready to change those careers and then go into something new and then jump into something new.
Okay, absolutely. And just to add to your last point, and I know we are sitting in an educational institute, but two quick things. My take a little bit on this is that जो degree है वो अब सिर्फ रिश्ता लेने के लिए काफ़ी important है. Very honestly, big organizations, even Google, has actually clearly said they don't need a degree to apply to Google. They have their own online certificates, and you might want to research about it. They're called Google Career Certifications. Just take those certificates and apply at Google. They don't need a degree from anywhere. Similarly, the big fours and all of those are also doing the same. And also, by the way, I also applied to LUMS, तो मुझे MBA में admission नहीं मिला. LUMS ने कहा नहीं, आप qualify नहीं करते. तो फिर मुझे recently जब LUMS ने कहा कि आप पढ़ाने आए entrepreneurship, तो मैंने कहा आपने तो मुझे पहले reject किया था. So it was, so absolutely, I understand, but thank you for the thought. So we have another interesting question. How would AI reshape low-level labor in Pakistan, keeping in view majority of population literacy rate and current job market? How would AI actually, from a, I think अगर आप तीनों इस पे ज़्यादा बात कर सकें, from a very bottom of the pyramid labor की बात की जा रही है?
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
वैसे एक चीज़ तो मैं नोट कर रहा हूँ, and I'm sure आप सब भी आइडेंटिफाई कर रहे होंगे कि इस वक्त हमारी लेबर जब फारिग होती है तो टिकटॉक पे है, which is very entertainment, of course, but I think that will shift. The pehli, at least now they have an interactive device, and they're actually the content creators as well, जिनको आप बात कर रहे थे. They are also monetizing it. So please.
Yeah, so when AI takes away certain jobs, it also enables certain new and unprecedented jobs. So for example, now your rickshaw driver or your cab driver has access to a much bigger market through the online apps like Uber and
Kareem captains.
Exactly,
well.
they're now Kareem captains, so they have bigger reach. You're, for example, like Maryam gave the example of someone selling a cow, so maybe some years back, the only market they had access to was people in their own village, and which could monopolize things, but now they don't. Now they have bigger access. So it just needs a little bit of reshaping. And just like what I would build upon the jugaad thing that Maryam said. So it's like these people, and they're pretty good at it. ये समझ लेते हैं कि इस नई सिस्टम में क्या अफोर्डेंसेज हैं इनके लिए. सो नाउ आपकी सारी मार्केट्स, फॉर एग्जांपल द ह्यूमन इन द लूप. सो द ह्यूमन इन द लूप फॉर द मशीन लर्निंग सिस्टम्स, इट्स नॉट स्केलेबल अंटिल यू मेक अ कम्युनिटी आउट ऑफ इट. एक एक्सपर्ट से नहीं चलता. द वे गूगल डज इट, द वे फेसबुक डज इट, यू नीड अ कम्युनिटी of people who listen to posts or look at posts and mark them as inappropriate or appropriate and so on and so forth. So those are new jobs. And now like everyone through remote has access to a bigger job market. So I think वो पूरे pyramid के लिए जो है ना नई opportunities इसमें मौजूद हैं.
But this is actually defying one of the hypotheses कि वो illiterate हैं मगर वो tech इस्तेमाल कर रहे हैं. We expect कि आप literate होके tech पे आएंगे.
Yeah.
And they don't know. I mean, they haven't gone to school to learn English, but they're still using TikToks and the WhatsApps of the world.
Yeah.
So इसका मतलब है अगर हम local tech नहीं भी बना पाए, तो they're actually adopting global tech. So democratization of technology at least हो रही है at the bottom of the pyramid.
Absolutely.
Certain things. So I would say certain things, right? So I work with a lot of, unlike computer scientists, I don't work in a lab. I work with communities. So I go and I speak to men and women. And low literate, low income men and women, there's specific tech they use, right? So all tech is not being democratized, right? So it's how you design a certain tech, right? So WhatsApp did a great job when it introduced voice notes, because what it meant was it's the most ubiquitously used application because it allows you to share media and it allows you to communicate using voice. So you no longer need to be literate to use WhatsApp. This is also true for TikTok. You will not find these populations on Instagram, and you will not find them certainly on Twitter, right? So there is now a classes divide also in which applications they have access to and what they are using it for, right? Yeah. So I think that's absolutely true. And I think it's also very, very true that a lot of these populations.
वैसे यहाँ पूछ रहे थे कितने लोग actively TikTok use कर रहे हैं? If you can raise your hands quickly.
I mean, this is not surprising to me. This is not TikTok target population.
But I just a quick thought. How many? None of you? Oh wow, there's one hand.
Yeah.
So no judgment, but just a thought. So absolutely true.
Right, and so I think that, and I also think that, जो हमारे students हैं ना, they're also catching on to this. So I teach courses where students have to have a project, and it has to be contextualized and it has to be local, right? So it has to address local aspirations or needs. I think we've moved beyond needs, by the way. So जो need-based computing थी ना, we've gone beyond that to look at desires and aspirations, right? TikTok feeds into your desires, and as does Instagram. It's not a need. And so,
वैसे कितने लोग Instagram पे हैं? Yeah.
That's your target population, right? And so I had, in the last semester, I had somebody develop something like Amazon's Mechanical Turk, but for local tasks in Urdu, where low literate folks could easily, and we need that data from low literate folks, right? Companies need that data from low literate folks. As a researcher, I need that data, and it's a nightmare to get that data. And I'm happy to pay these folks to come onto this very easy system, and let's just do a bunch of tasks for me, and I'm happy to pay them, right? So to monetize things that cannot be automated.
Thank you so much. So we have just a minute or so left. So Dr. Khurram, I'll post this question to you. to what extent have we become either complacent or accepting about automated technologies that obtain and use our data, which may include sensitive information? So more about privacy and in that sense.
Of course, in this direction,
I hope I won't put you in a difficult situation here. But
yeah, I'll try to answer this in the best way. That
So 30
of course
seconds so
the
that we
government
can-
needs to really put their foot in and create policies. People cannot actually make policies and enforce these policies. So data sharing and data collection, data handling, storages, keeping the privacy as privacy of the people. So all these things need to be looked into by the government, and there must be, otherwise AI cannot flourish. These systems cannot be made, and data cannot be collected. Biasness cannot be dealt. So of course, as technical people, technology persons, we can, we are trying to do the best efforts, but if there is no policy, everybody would be, just doing what.
ये वो पॉलिसी के वक्त आपकी तरफ इशारा कर रहे हैं अली.
Yeah, so-
तो last 30 seconds, आप what do you have to say to the government around tech policy or even AI actually? Any thoughts? How should they even go about it, regulate it? हमने आज ज़्यादा बात नहीं कर सके. We wanted to talk about the oversight as well. But quickly, if you can put your words in 30 seconds.
So, आपने दो regulators, you named two regulators early. I think they should take a long vacation. But for others, I feel they should let it happen. That's the most important thing. That's how, as in let it happen and then just look at it and see what's happening. But one of my concerns is not so much of the big brother concern. It's more to do with how our data is being used by commercial organizations to monetize or sell things to us. And I feel that is a huge invasion of privacy. I don't like, we say our phone is listening to us. It's not. It's just become really, really smart at predicting what we want to buy. And that scares me. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. And back to Miss Imi and Miss Nausheen for this. Thank you very much.